Good morning. It is my name is Farrokh Mistree, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to a conversation with Zoroastrian faculty on the Zoroastrian Faculty Network's launching of the UK Humanities and Social Sciences program. This series is put together under the auspices of the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce. And the focus of the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce is the building the spirit of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity beyond resources controlled. Specifically, what we're looking at is our entrepreneurs who create intellectual value, economic value, and social value. And the World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce is involved in promoting all three and working at the nexus of all three. We have three panelists today. Shirin, Madon, her background is in digital innovation and international development. Lyla, Mehta, her background is global development and politics of sustainability. Zubin, Sethna, whose interest is entrepreneurial marketing and consumer behavior. We are looking for all three to wow the audience with their thoughts. Karishma will come along, Karishma Koka will come along and synthesize what has been said and then open the floor up for discussions. The plan for the conversation today is opening what this webinar is about. There are about 5 minutes and I'm doing that right now. Each panelist will have eight minutes so to present who they are and what their focus is and how they're in what they offer to a prospective PhD student who would work with them. We have allocated about 20 minutes for synthesis and questions for clarification, and whatever time is left over, we will go into a dialogue which will be open to all to ask anything and say anything that they would like to do, and then there will be closing remarks. So we are planning this session for about 90 minutes. So what are we about? The World Zoroastrian Chamber of Commerce, in partnership with the Zarathustra faculty and academia, envision empowering Zarathustra students to learn how to create economic, cultural, and intellectual value. The mission of the Zoroastrian Faculty Network is to facilitate Zoroastrian youth through higher and specialized education to pursue careers in industry, government, and academia as business entrepreneurs who create economic value, social entrepreneurs who create social value, and knowledge entrepreneurs who create intellectual value. The ZFN webinars are in the form of a conversation to help Zarathustra youth to support, with support of their parents, which is very important, with support of their parents to attain higher and specialized education. It is in a conversation form. In other words, the panelists don't go around saying what we've done and how they've done it, and that's all they talk about. They seed questions that allow the community to interact with them in the dialogue mode. This initiative is supported by the RD Sethna Scholarship Fund, and for further information, you can contact them at that email address. So what is the Zoroastrian Faculty Network UK Humanities and Social Sciences program? This is a pilot program, and it's akin to a startup. We are starting this off, so there are risks involved. And our hope is that we are able to find a solid foundation with which to move forward. The Zoroastrian Faculty Network seeks to connect a Zoroastrian faculty member in the UK with a Zoroastrian student who has the competence to get a postgraduate or a doctoral degree. Our goal is to match a Zoroastrian faculty member who has the competence and the dhyanat to mentor his or her Zoroastrian mentee to not only learn how to create economic, social, and intellectual value, but also to give back to the Zoroastrian community. This is a very important issue. We are looking for people who not only want to be educated, but who want to give back to the Zoroastrian community. So we want to link the Zoroastrian faculty member with a Zoroastrian student who has the competence to get a postgraduate or doctoral degree and has the dhyanat to give back to the Zoroastrian community. So here the competence becomes very important, because to get into graduate programs, you have to have a certain level of competence to make that happen. What will the Zoroastrian Faculty Network do? The Zoroastrian Faculty Network will identify potential Zoroastrian scholars. That's why we have this webinar, and we plan to continue encouraging the dialogue between the 3 faculty that have volunteered to participate in this program and the students, we hope, who will join us. To identify potential Zoroastrian scholars who have the competence to get a postgraduate doctoral degree and have the dhyana to give back to the Zoroastrian community. The Zoroastrian Faculty Network will facilitate the dialogue between potential mentors and potential mentees, and will leave the decision as to whether or not to proceed to the mentor and the potential ZFN scholar. The ZFN will not get involved in those negotiations. The ZFN will help the selected ZFN scholar to get funding from India, Hong Kong, and other places as we proceed. The funding is not in place yet, but we are confident that we will be able to work something out to make this happen. In this webinar, our goal is to make the Zarathustra youth and their parents aware of the UK-based Zoroastrian faculty who are pioneering this program for the academic year 2022. The emphasis is on the notion of pioneering, that we are doing it for the first time. So there are many questions that come up, and we have not yet worked them out. And so please feel free to raise those questions so we can talk about them in the dialogue. I'm delighted to invite Shirin Madon to introduce herself and what she's about and what she's looking for in a student, in a mentee, and what she is able to give to the mentee. Shirin, the mic is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Delighted to be here. I'm Shirin Madon from London. Basically, I've lived in London for all of my life. My immediate family is here. My husband is South Indian. I have a daughter. But throughout my life, I've been increasingly connected in many different ways to India. So a person born and brought up in London, education here. But as I speak in the next few minutes, I hope you'll get to understand my my commitment to research, and also in my personal life to remain close to India. In terms of background, I have the combination of economics and information technology. And the important point with that is that where I'm at and what I think about in terms of academic work is this interface between technology deployment and economic development, socioeconomic development. I work at the LSE in 2 different departments, and that makes sense because I do come from an interdisciplinary background. So I'm at the LSE, I've been there for 20 odd years now. So working half in international development and half in the information systems group in the Department of Management. My deep passion is to help to create a world in which today more and more technology is everywhere. It's all around us. And often we ask ourselves that question, that is it making the world a better place? So we should not overshadow problems of exclusion and vulnerability. And these are the kinds of passion and interest which drives the different research teams that I've been looking at. You will find more details of that if you look at my contacts on the internet, more details of my research and teaching profile. If we move on to the next slide, please. Academic journey. So education, yes, I enjoyed school, but I was one of those sort of pretty late starters. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I fitted. My parents were instrumental because we used to go to Bombay for holidays, and I was encouraged to think about the very obvious divides that we see when we go to different parts of India, Bombay, and to think about why is this happening, and what are some of the possible solutions that one can think about. In terms of career choice, I was a late starter, and as late as 23 is when I first started my undergraduate degree. I then went on full speed for the postgraduate master's and then the PhD following on from that. The motivation for my graduate degree was very much this interdisciplinary, trying to match what technology can do for improving development prospects, developmental potential. And for that, I spent quite a lot of time in Gujarat, in the state of Gujarat, where I was looking at how technology is making a positive or a negative impact on rural development. So my fieldwork was in the rural development agencies in and around Gujarat. My dream is very much to start a think tank with this interface of technology and development to carry out research which is policy facing and which is about trying to understand the role of technology, but in sync with other interventions in different sectors. So social assistance programs in health, etc., etc. If I move on to the lessons from my professional journey, I am very much interested in what happens at the point at which technology is deployed. So my focus has always been on trying to understand practices on the ground. This could be in a health center, where I'm doing work at the moment, in the village health and sanitation committees in India, or this could also be in other settings where social assistance programs are deployed. A quick example, just one quick example of what I'm currently doing is, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Aadhaar biometric identity platform in India. It's so contentious, such a lot of debates around it. One of the things I am looking at right now is how this core centralized biometrics database, which is of course excellent for creating efficiency for subsidy dispersal, but I'm trying to look at the interface between that and what really matters on the ground, which are the local work processes of retail outlets. In this case, I'm looking at the farmer retail outlets when they're giving subsidized fertilizer to farmers. So the question I'm interested in is, although technology is supposed to disintermediate and therefore make better, it's these very local intermediaries which are absolutely essential for creating value for the small farmers. It's important for me to be able to share my research output with those on the ground. If I follow with that example, I'm talking about the farmer guilds, the farmer cooperatives. If I'm talking about my work in the health sector, it is also with the health professionals, the ASHA worker, the Angawadi workers on the ground. I try to keep up with my social networks, that's in the academic information technology for development field, but also more broadly with my personal, my Zoroastrian network, and try very much to also keep my attention on fitness. I think that's very important, especially when we sit down a lot. On mentoring and giving back, I think what's important for me is to get to know. I've tried to say a little bit about my passion, but it's equally important to get to know what is within you, the passion of a student. And this is, of course, not just in terms of the piece of paper, but what is it that they really want to, what intrigues them? What do they want to understand about this complex world that we live in, associated with technology and development? I try with my teaching right now with my students at the LSE, we look at alternative models of trying to understand innovation through technology. We look at the Ubuntu model from Africa and the way it plays out in policy and technology projects, and also the Behaviour, many other, these are just two examples, many other ways of thinking about innovation, which is not necessarily the Western model. And finally, tips for young Zoroastrians. I think that for me, and in the domain that I'm coming from, someone who recognizes the value of digital innovation from this socio-technical perspective that I've tried to summarize. It's not technology per se, but it's for us to understand where it comes from, the rationality and the consequences. And for this reason, the mentee should really be willing to engage in interdisciplinary research. So looking at ideas and theories from two slightly different fields of study. Although I have to say that the field of IT for development is no longer new. That's been around now for certainly about 2 decades. For my part, I will help my mentee to translate his or her passion into a well-defined research project. And that is, of course, around the phrase here of digital innovation and development, trying to understand this interplay and trying to see how it can help society, and therefore also fulfilling and giving back, as we would do when we try to follow the principles of the Zoroastrian faith as well. Thank you. I think I'll stop there. Thanks for listening. We'll move on. Lyla, I think, is next.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's really an honor to be part of this network, and thank you very much to WZCC and ZFN for inviting me to speak at today's webinar. There's lots of overlaps, some overlaps between me and Shirin, so it's nice to follow on. I'm a professor at the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex in Brighton, and I also work as a 20% professor at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. I was born in Bombay, but moved to Europe as a young adult. I'm married to Morten Sjoster, a Norwegian, and we have a daughter, Tara, and live in Brighton. I have family in India, the US, Norway, and all over the world. So I consider myself to be a global citizen. And before the pandemic, we also spent several months a year in Norway, India, etc. I trained as a sociologist, and I have a PhD in development studies. And I use the case of water and sanitation to focus on the politics of scarcity, gender, human rights, and access to resources. I also work on climate change and uncertainty, forced displacement, and more recently on the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm an editor of the journal Environment and Planning E, and you can check my webpage for my books, articles, op-eds, etc. I'm very committed to social, gender, and environmental justice, human rights, and also increasingly in the struggle against fascist trends, which we see are on the rise in very worrying and ugly ways in India and other parts of the world. And I'm also concerned about gender justice in the Zoroastrian community, especially given the prevalence of patrilineal and patriarchal notions of who constitutes a Zoroastrian and a Parsi, thus excluding many. So my contact details are here, so please free to get in touch and keep in touch. So now a little on my background and journey. As I said, I was born in India, in Bombay, in Colaba, very secular Colaba, not Kushrubag. I spent a lot of my childhood and youth attending events by the Zoroastrian studies. And like Shirin, you know, my parents were very formative. So I had a lot of unconditional love and support from my parents who exposed me to books, music, the arts, as well as different cultural and social realities. From my mother and grandmother, who were involved in social work and social work education, I became aware of issues concerning disability, inequality, poverty, and social exclusion. And these issues were reinforced through the educational institutions I attended, both a convent as well as Jesuit institutions. And I see somebody here who was also part of St. Xavier's, where I was for 2 years. So at the age of 18, I moved to Vienna and I did a degree in German to be with my mum, and I studied sociology. And there I became aware of the differences between rich and poor countries, as well as deep structural inequality. I gradually got very committed to environmental issues, which motivated me to do fieldwork in rural Gujarat and Maharashtra on the impacts of a mega dam, the Narmada Dam, on tribal women. And these experiences really changed my life and exposed me to the uneven and unequal impacts of development and also its contested nature. Through engaging with the dynamics of the social movement, which was very prominent at the time, I saw firsthand police and state brutalities against very, very poor people who were never listened to, who were completely ignored, really invisible actors. And a year later, I embarked on a PhD to study the politics of water scarcity in Kutch, which was supposed to benefit from this project, but in reality, very little water has come there. And I spent a year in the village studying diverse experiences and perceptions of water scarcity. And I realized that infrastructure or technology, just as Shirin said, is never neutral. There's always unequal impacts. And similarly, water invariably flows uphill to those who have money and power. And through this work and ongoing research, I have argued that there's nothing natural about water scarcity. Instead, it is linked to power, politics, social exclusions around gender, caste, class, as well as flawed water management policies and practices. I work in an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary manner using social science, but also increasingly working with natural scientists, as well as the arts and humanities, as well as local communities and stakeholders. Over my career, I've enjoyed doing fieldwork in different rural and urban areas in India, as well as different countries across Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. So be it around climate change, sanitation, or water management, my work is concerned with understanding diverse perspectives and experiences of environmental change and problems. So my current projects look at how vulnerable coastal communities in Kutch, Mumbai, and the Sundarbans understand climate-related uncertainties. And the view here is to understand historically and locally appropriate forms of transformation, and also to compare how the below really views these things, because they are actually at the forefront of climate change, as opposed to just merely listening to experts who have particular ways of doing things, i.e. through models, through scientific expertise. And through my work, I've also been honored to be invited to play leadership roles in the UN system, i.e. leading a major report on water for food security for the World Commission on Food Security. So I dream of a world where water justice prevails and there's water and sanitation for all. I think it's an outrage that after decades of development planning, billions are denied basic rights to water and sanitation, and that women and girls work hours daily to get water instead of using that time for their education, livelihoods, or leisure. I just have one slide. I was advised to just have the one, so here we go. So just stick to this and listen to me. So on mentoring, I've successfully supervised 14 doctoral researchers and hundreds of master's students, and I've convened many courses. So teaching has really been a very fulfilling and key part of my work at IDS. And for me, it's really been very important to give students confidence to develop their own original perspectives and do amazing research, and obviously distill all these amazing ideas and their fieldwork into the final product, which is quite a long journey and process. And I've also mentored several postdocs and have many collaborative projects and publications with past students. Working in global development is full of normative and ethical dilemmas. Addressing issues concerning climate and water justice means also being aware of our own roles as consumers, producers, and carbon emitters. And this also means following our own and being aware of our own positions of power and privilege as researchers, practitioners, policymakers, etc. So this does mean challenging dominant framings of scientists and policymakers regarding both environmental problems and their solutions. For example, do you want to go on mute? Whoever's on mute, who's making the noise. For example, why aren't sustainable environmental pathways pursued despite their contribution to the climate cycles and their high social and economic costs? Who is benefiting and who's losing out? Which alternative pathways exist and why they're being ignored? So this means speaking truths to power and lifting the often invisible perspectives and interests of the powerless and vulnerable who are left out. So I've been really lucky to work with inspiring students, colleagues, research partners from around the world. And these, as well as invitations to engage and participate in events and interesting processes globally, have given me a lot of professional fulfillment. I really love traveling and fieldwork, something that hasn't been possible in the pandemic. And of course, my family, immediate as well as wider, and our new puppy, Pablo, are what keep me going right now. So finally, what are my tips for mentees and what would I offer? I work best with students and colleagues who share these passions for social and environmental justice and want to be advocates for vulnerable and marginalized people. But of course, since I'm an academic, I also strive for academic excellence, so really original ideas, cutting edge work. I would love to work with students who have strong academic interests, have an original idea, and they are also committed thus to some of these wider issues. If you work with me, you will also be at the Institute of Development Studies, which is consistently ranked first in the world for development studies. We're committed to academic excellence, so we seek to generate original knowledge, but also influence what's happening on the ground. So at IDS, we connect not just to academics, but also to policymakers, practitioners, as well as ordinary people. So this also means working on societal change and being part of that change. For example, I have 2 ongoing projects, Transformation as Praxis in South Asia, the Tapestry Project, and Towards Brown Gold, looking at off-grid sanitation in rapidly urbanizing areas in Asia and Africa. And both are looking at local reimagining and innovations to tackle the climate and sanitation crisis. So for example, Tapestry is working with pastoralists in Kutch and their unique swimming camels to reframe the drylands, to move away from that perception of drylands being unproductive, to highlight instead the importance of these local livelihood practices in the dryland economy. And these are also ways to tackle climate change and biodiversity. In Bombay, we're working with Kohli fishers, for example, to deal with waste and creek management and revive Kohli livelihoods that have been undermined by commercial developments and the encroachment of the coast. In the Brown Gourd project, we're looking at decentralized use of excreta because, centralized planning don't work everywhere, and there's lots of people that are off-grid. And also to look at the politics of marginality there. So I've been really privileged to have been mentored by very caring and brilliant academics, and I would hope to provide the similar scholarly ethics of care and give back in similar ways. Doing a PhD is probably one of the most exciting journeys to embark on, but of course, full of ups and downs. And it's my role to see the scholar through both and offer support, especially when it's tough, either after fieldwork or now in the pandemic. I've also been extremely privileged to get support from the Zoroastrian community and different trusts as a child in my youth in multiple ways, and also in India, Austria, now in the UK. And I would thus be very happy to give back to the community and support a committed Zoroastrian scholars research journey and also mentor their early career progression. Thanks a lot. I look forward to our discussions, and I hand over to Zubin now.
Thank you, Lyla. And thanks very much, Farrokh and Karishma, for inviting me here today. And a big, big thank you to WZCC and, of course, ZFN. So, hi, everyone. My name is Zubin Sethna. A little about me. But before I start, I'm going to tell you today is all about a story. Okay, I love narrative. I love narrative theory, and it's all about telling a story. And today is about telling the story of 3 UK-based academics who potentially you could work with. Now, I say you, but I'm not actually sure how many potential students we've got on the call live. I know this is being recorded, and so if you're watching this post live, okay, as you're watching a recorded version, well, I'm talking to you here, okay, and it's about you understanding who potentially you could come and work with. Now, I know that I've got 8 minutes. I'm going to start my little timer on the right hand side, and I'll try and keep the time, okay, but of course there's a lot to tell. All right, so me, Zubin Sethna, born and raised in London, right behind Wimbledon tennis courts. I have 3 younger sisters, yeah, as the slide says, my kind of academic background, undergrad at De Montfort, master's in Wales, PhD in Scotland, and all of that might suggest that I'm some sort of an academic. Okay, well, I am now, but I never was before. I'm not a career academic. I spent 20 years in practice, working for organizations, learning my trade as a marketer and also as an entrepreneur. So over the years, in between periods of employment, I also had periods of self-employment. And over the years, I've started from scratch 6 businesses, 3 of which have been sold and 3 of which are still current. So I came into academia later in life, okay? Basically, I mean, I'll tell you very quickly, the way it happened was that I had a business into aromatherapy, and we used to train our trained aromatherapists to work in the markets that we specialized in, which were the care home markets. And so I had a teaching qualification already. And when we sold that business, didn't know what to do, spent 3 months in the pub drinking myself silly, and then thought, no, I need to give something back to the community, and started teaching in the evenings. And that's how I ended up in academia. I now am a tenured professor, full professor at Regent's University London. My full title is Professor of Entrepreneurial Marketing and Consumer Behaviour. Last year in 2020, I was delighted that the World Economic Forum, our friends at Davos, appointed me as an expert advisor in entrepreneurship and family business. And I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Journal for Research in Marketing and Entrepreneurship. Now, apart from that, as my role at university, I'm the director of content for academic studies for the university's largest undergraduate program, as well as a couple of master's programs. The undergraduate program has 6 pathways. And so I guess my role, even though my title is director content, my actual role is one akin to a dean, if you like. So I manage, I don't know, 50, 60 members of staff within the department. or within the faculty rather. Okay, so my passion. It says they're bridging the gap between academia and practice. And as a former practitioner, I'm really, really conscious of this, because I know that in most fields, not, not all, but most fields, there is a divide between what we teach in academia, what we teach in universities, and how it's actually done in practice, in reality. And, no bigger divide than in the world of marketing and business, and practitioners are always telling me, Zub, there's a divide here. You need to bridge that somehow. And we're doing that in entrepreneurship at my university. So recently we were actually ranked #1 in the UK for the highest density of entrepreneurs, which was a real achievement, because actually we ranked over and above universities like Oxford and Cambridge. So, big kudos to my team at Regents for achieving that. But my passion is also community projects. As you'll know, hearing me in just a second in the next slide, I'm a big fan of community projects. I'm a big fan of food and friends. For a number of years, we've had something called the Dunsuck Club in the UK, where, we would meet up on a Sunday anyway to kind of eat together. And we realized that actually, if each family decided, or each person decided to chip in, a few pounds for the privilege of eating the Dunsuck at our friends' houses, over the year we could accumulate a nice sum of money to actually donate to community causes. So we've been doing that for a couple of years. And pre-pandemic, travel and driving was my passion. But if we go to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a bit about what my kind of involvement in all of this is. So my academic journey, let me start with that, okay? Because this is about a story. This is about me as an individual, and you need to feel comfortable enough with me holistically, okay? So my academic journey has been really, really hard. I basically left school at 16. My parents unfortunately had split up when I was about 10 years old. I went through a very messy, nasty divorce, and my school life was terrible. I just couldn't concentrate on my studies at all. And so I left at 16. And on the very last day, I went to see some of my favorite teachers. And I was walking past my Latin teacher's room, and he saw me, and I didn't particularly like him, so I wasn't going to say bye to him, but he saw me walking outside, and he said, "Sethna, get in here right now." So I kind of went in and said, "Yes, sir." He said, this is exactly what he said, okay? He looked at me, he looked down at me, and he said, "Sethna, you were always a failure. You will always be a failure. Now get out of my office." And yeah, so academia for me was very much stop-start. When someone knocks you back and slaps you that hard, at a very, very kind of early age, you start to question your abilities in all sorts of ways. Education for me became enjoyable much, much later. When I did my master's when I was 30 and my PhD when I was kind of, sort of late 30s. And so the role of parents, the role of my parent, I should say, my mum, was not necessarily education. She didn't really understand what I did or why I did it, but she gave me a lot of real grounding in life skills. Life skills. We were cooking full Parsi meals, me and my 3 sisters, by the time we were 8, 9, 10 years old. She gave us this kind of understanding of what it means to give back to anybody who needs your help, not just within the Zoroastrian community, but in any community out there. So that's what I took from my parents, or parent rather. Career choice, practitioner first, academic second, absolutely. My motivation to get a graduate degree, as I've already mentioned, was my Latin teacher. And my dream is to absolutely continue to impact young lives for as long as I can. Behind me, you see those 3 books there. They're all bestsellers in the UK and Europe on entrepreneurial marketing and consumer behavior. The yellow one with the donut sold, I think 19,000 copies. And so I hope that in some small way, I'm impacting, young lives and adding to their learning. So lessons from my professional journey. What makes me happy in my professional and personal life? Well, it has to be graduation day. You know, that feeling of watching your students walking up and down the stage, you know, picking up their certificates, you know, knowing that, you know, you've helped them to get there, you know, and that progression from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, and then, you know, your kind of your masters and PhD students. Okay, let me turn. Oh God, I'm over time now. Okay, so you're gonna have to forgive me, but I'm gonna carry on talking. For me, lessons from my professional journey. You got to have mini milestones. Okay, nothing. You know, most projects are big, but you have to have mini milestones and mini achievements. My entrepreneurial work has really helped me to understand how to put academia into practice and vice versa. You know, because we can. You know, I'm constantly learning from my colleagues in practice. My wife Nawaz and our Kumon business. So one of our businesses is a Kumon center. We teach maths and English to about 300 kids at our center in North London 3 times a week. And I take a lot of inspiration from work that Nawaz does. And of course, my 3 children, Maya, Kai, and Kaus. Maya's a second year going into a third year engineering student. So I'm really, really proud of her. She's done really, really well. And Kai has just finished his A-levels in maths, physics, and design and technology, A star, A star, A. So he's taking a year out to do some work experience in an architectural design practice before he goes on to university to study architectural design. And Kaus, you know, he's just finished his GCSEs. So on mentoring and giving back, just as I tell my children, okay, one of my approach basically is, and specifically for you folks here, Zoroastrianism gives me an identity. Okay, you know, it's an identity. I'm not overtly religious, okay, but it does give me an identity. It gives me something that I can hang on to, as it were. And it's also, of course, an extended family for me. And I developed this passion for the community from a very young age. So as a young Zoroastrian, I think my first foray, I mean, my mum used to take me to the Zoroastrian Centre or the old Zoroastrian house in Combain Gardens here in the UK from a very, very early age. But my first foray as a young adult, you know, or young person on my own to the centre was when I was about 13 years old. You know, I went to a YZ function. My mum was, you know, she was adamant that I shouldn't go because I had homework to do. But I said, no, I need to go. I went there, had a fantastic time. And mum warned me. She said, you know, but when you come home, I'm gonna lock the door. You're not gonna be able to come in if you come back late. But I still went, you know. And then, you know, I knew that mum had to open mum's car door. So sure enough, I came home, front door was locked. I went into the car and I slept there. And then 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, mum's knocking on the glass to ask me to come back up home. And I'm telling you that because I developed a lot of friendships from a very, very young age. And those friendships have now turned into wanting to help others in all sorts of ways. So I've mentioned 2 points there. The enterprise coffee evenings that I run for the WZCC here in the UK. So once a month, we meet up here at any stage of that enterprise, and we will talk through what they need, what they have, what they don't have, and so on and so forth. And I'm also involved with the CZC, which is the Care in the Zoroastrian Community, with a bunch of friends here. And we basically, this is a project that's been running for about 3 years, and we support older people in the Zoroastrian community by weekly telephone calls. So we've got about 70, 80 volunteers who call about 40 older people every week to make sure that everything's okay with them. And through the pandemic, we were actually supporting them by delivering food as well. So finally, my tips for young Zoroastrians. What am I looking for in a mentee? Well, I'm certainly looking for someone who has an interest in the kind of academic areas of research that I have. So marketing, enterprise, entrepreneurship, consumer behavior, and in all of those, you know, under the umbrella of ethnicities maybe, and cross-cultural studies, you know, so there's a broad church there of different areas that we could actually talk about in terms of crafting a PhD research degree for you. So do get in touch. What am I also looking for? Well, I'm looking for steadfast commitment, okay? No matter how hard things get. And let me assure you, things will get absolutely hard for you. You know, as I think Lyla mentioned, the PhD journey whilst we're all there, your supervisor will be there holding your hand, supporting you. You'll have a team of people, you have other PhD students, you know, to kind of have a grown with. Okay, ultimately it's your PhD, and it's a really, really lonely journey at times, you know, because it's you and, you know, you digging into your research. So be prepared for that. You know, this is not an easy task to undertake. And over and above that, the final thing I want to say is that anybody around the world can register at any university to do a PhD, funded or unfunded. But what makes this one that the ZFN are proposing, okay, different from anything else, is that there is also a very, very strong element of community engagement. So make no bones about it. When you come to study, if you come to study with myself, Lyla, or Shirin, there will be an element of you having to engage with the community in some shape or form, right? And if you're not prepared to do that, then don't bother coming to the ZFN, basically. You know, you can apply directly to any university to go do a PhD. But that's what the difference is here, basically. So I hope that gives you a flavor of who I am and all the kind of different interests that I've had over the years. You know, I play bass guitar, I play normal guitar. I have a boosted board, electric skateboard that whizzes me around London doing 24 miles per hour, and all sorts of other fun activities and things, okay? But, you know, ultimately, we're here today to talk about your PhD journey and what we can do to help you study in London. So do get in touch, and good luck with your applications. Thank you, Farrokh. I'm sorry I'm way over time.
Thank you ever so much, Zubin, Lyla, and Shirin. All of you here today, and those watching this recording in the future, are realizing from these talks that the Zoroastrian Faculty Network is here to facilitate the Zarathustra youth to learn how to create value through higher and specialized education, and through belonging to a community of like-minded people, a fraternity of people who will help them through this. So we've heard from Lyla and Shirin about their journeys, and Zubin. Shirin talked about digital innovation and development. Lyla talked about the environment, development, and sustainability. And Zubin talked about entrepreneurial marketing. And they all highlighted this desire to have a student who has the desire and the intention, the dhyanat, to learn, to be inspired and educated, and to give back. So as we synthesize this journey in our own minds, in our own context, my name is Karishma Koka. I have a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Cambridge, a master's from India, from the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research in computational neuroscience, and a BSc in a broad range of subjects from environmental science, chemistry, biology, and the languages. And my value is for education from different teachers, primarily Zarathustra, my parents, and mentors. And as I show, Zarathustra has focused on, in every part of the teaching, the journey of moving forward. We've just finished the Fravardigan. Moving forward is the root word fra, but equally, frashta is the word for inspired, frashokeriti for renovation, and frita or frashmi for someone who causes progress. So welcome to the fraternity of the Zarathustra Faculty Network, where we empower individuals through education. And my passion is to do this by bringing people and organizations together so that the Zoroastrian Faculty Network's vision of creating value in the overlap between the three domains of intellectual, social, and economic, while bearing in mind the ecology of the whole world, is brought out with joy. We have joy as the focus of, or happiness as the focus of whatever we do. We say, with a good mind, let us tread the path of righteousness to build strength, kshatrin. These are the three Amesha Spentas. And in the Yathahu Vairyo, we say, with a good mind, let us process knowledge, get back a good mind, working with Asha to build three things: to work for Shautananam, action for the progress of Ahura Mazda, with Kshatrim, dominion, the strength to do good, so that we can become the Vastarim, the caretaker, to help those who need the Drigobyo. So as we reflect on how our 3 faculty members have talked about being Vastarims, the caretakers, let us now look at what you can contribute to the world. To create competencies, to create value beyond resources controlled. Now, this emergent property of integrating knowledge, inspiring and taking action comes from building, sharing and applying knowledge. As the Zartushti Faculty Network, as a part of the WZCC, thinks of in a domain overlap way, so that the action is integrated. And this connection that we desire to bring you between the students and the faculty creates a dialogue between the students, the parents, and the faculty around the world. Shirin talked about digital technology and how this can lead to progress. She said she recognizes the value of digital innovation and the rationale and consequence of how this interdisciplinary research impacts society. And she said the development outcome of the process. She looks for a student who is committed to this interdisciplinary qualitative research. And she said she commits to helping the mentee to translate their passion to help society. Lyla, the bottom left corner now, talked about detailed engagement with local stakeholders. But she did more than that. She talked about her journey with water, the climate, and now COVID. And the result she seeks is for transformative outcomes. Transformation is key to Zartushti Daina, the faith, the path, the conscience. Because we say, Atarsh, the transformer. So we venerate the Lord of Wisdom through Atarsh. Lyla is looking to support a student through their confidence in originality, through locally grounded perspectives to inform experts of their practice. I would say practice of choice, because she focused on choice. She highlighted how she given the choice to use 1 slide or 2 slides by Farrokh. And this choice is critical to how the faculty transforms this to the choice of the student, that the student makes their choices. Lyla talked about working with people around the world, and she was committed to seeing the scholar through both the ups and the downs. Zubin focused entirely on the student and on his journey and how he will help the student, how challenges can be converted into learning and life skills, so that a motivated student is desired who wants to impact lives. Yes, Dee, will you mute everybody and then unmute me? Someone's got their speaker on. Thank you. Zubin talked about mini milestones, so that these being achieved and transformed into reality allows an individual to achieve greater things in life. And the student he is looking for is a person who is interested in marketing and who is steadfast and committed. Zubin believes in constant learning. He believes in education and engaging with the community, so that this Zarathushtri identity translates into supporting others. As we reflect upon what our speakers have talked about today, and the fact that when a student comes to London, they've got a community here. So we at the Zoroastrian Trust Funds for Europe and the World Zoroastrian Organization and those around the country will support a student because of our belief system. So as we reflect upon creating value in our journey, we want to give a student and the parent through this dialogue support, whether it is applying to university, helping you make your choice so that your purpose, your passion can be used as Zarathustra intended for the good of the world. Zarathustra's Gathas give us this to reflect upon. In Yasnaha 30.2, we say, listen, reflect, and then decide. In Yasnaha 30.2, which we've heard about in many of the Zartushti Faculty Network webinars, whose link I have provided in the chat box, this helps us make our choice. Farrokh has focused on this several times, and Behram, who's also here on the call, has shown us that in 31.19, it says, he who hears and meditates over the truth for the advantage of the world, and then uses one's power of speech to communicate this with others, can bring about the transformation through good action, so that we can all together build Ushta in Ahura Mazda's kingdom. With that, please start filling the chat box with your questions to each speaker, because this session is about you, both now and the people listening to this in the future, so that we can go beyond resources controlled to build competencies. With that, may I hand over to Farrokh Mistree, who will first take questions moderated by him, and then we will open the floor for the open dialogue.
Great. So I'm delighted to, I want to thank all three speakers together with Karishma for putting together such an inspiring set of information and talks. And Karishma is going to help me call on people. So you can do it two ways. One is in the chat, put something in the chat. Other is to use, to raise your hand, and I will call on you as I see who's available and when you're available, who wants to talk. So the floor is open. And who'd like to start by addressing questions to each panelist? So initially we will have questions for the panelists, and then we will open it up for everybody. So let's proceed.
We've got a question from Nazneen, one of the youth from the Zoroastrian Faculty Network.
Great, Nazneen. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My question is to all the speakers today. Basically, what's the most important thing that you're looking out for in a mentee?
Quick answers, please. So, Shirin?
Yeah, well, for me, the most important thing is a deep desire to not understand the technicalities of computers and digitization, but to appreciate the potential or the affordances of the potential of technology, then to step back and to continue with a deep engagement of the actual thing that you're looking at, whether you're using technology for primary healthcare, for primary education, for social assistance. So I'm looking for someone who is committed to both of these, the potential of the technology as well as the issue itself.
Thank you. Lyla, then Zubin.
Yeah, thanks. I think we've already outlined it, but just again, I guess a very passionate person, really with an original idea, committed to doing excellent work, and also making a difference around issues of sustainability and global development.
Great. Thank you, Zubin.
Yeah, I think that word commitment rears its ugly head again. For me, the person needs to have an obvious interest in marketing, entrepreneurship, consumer behavior, ethnicities, and cross-cultural issues, as it were. I used to, I've been visiting faculty at the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. I'm a visiting prof at ISMI in Mumbai. And so there's a natural interest there as well, basically. So anyone coming from India, needs to have those interests as well. But over and above all of that, it really needs to be someone that I get on with, and who can get on with me. 3 years of a full-time PhD program is a lot of time to spend with one person. And I can tell you a very personal story here, Farrokh. When I started my PhD, I'd applied to 2 places, Stirling and Lancaster. Stirling was voted the Scotland's top university, and Lancaster was right up there, 6-star business school. I went to see the prof at Lancaster, and she was let's put it this way, not a very nice person, and I just thought, look, I don't care how published you are and how, sort of how much academic rigor you have. If you're not a nice person, I can't spend three years with you, and so that's why I took my guy Ian at Stirling and spent 4 wonderful years with him, great supervisions, and then drinking single malt whiskey on the lake on the Stirling campus. What more could you ask for?
Thank you. I want to re-emphasize what Zubin has said. Instead of looking for a topic that interests you, look for a professor who's interested in investing in you as a human being, adopting you as his or her academic child. That makes a huge difference, because the topics will change, but the things that you learn from your professor who invests in you as his or her academic child will last you forever.
Yeah, just to add, I think it's a very intense relationship too, and there are ups and downs in the supervision and in the relationship. So yeah, it has to work, and you have to go by your gut feeling. I also had many choices: LSE, Berkeley, IDS. I saw the colleague, I saw my professor at IDS, and it clicked, and I'm still working with her. I mean, still in the same place. So I think there is a very strong relationship there, and you have to ultimately then go by your gut about whether it works or not for you, and vice versa.
Great. Who's next? Karen Pitawala, my question to Shirin Madon: with several emerging technologies in developed countries, how can developing countries benefit from them? So Karen Pitawala to Shirin Madon: with several emerging technologies in developed countries, how can developing countries benefit from them?
This is a crucial question, a very, very good one, very pertinent one. As we speak, we have the most sophisticated of machine learning tools for malnutrition and this and that. I would say that the short response here would be that not all of them are appropriate at a point in time. There are so many emerging technologies, with Aadhaar, for example, the new support that blockchain technologies is already giving. But every technology is politically, the design is a human effort. So design, not that it's in a sinister way, but design embodies various political ideologies, social ideologies, and then they get black boxed. So however emergent they are in the laboratory, and however they may work in a different country context, different part of the world, perhaps if you're talking about financial systems and Bitcoin, if we translate this and then just think that we can have transformation in a completely different setting, it will not only lead to no value, but it will be dysfunctional, because it will take away from whichever initiatives, offline initiatives, non-technology initiatives that have been started. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Mehran has a comment, and Mehran, would you like to share it with everybody? Because Mehran is a professor at Sharif University, which is a top university in Iran, and he has an interesting idea to share with everybody. So Mehran, please unmute yourself and explain yourself.
Yes, what I put there is that PhD is not just a title, nice title, because a lot of people want to be called doctor or professor. It's a lifestyle. It's something you choose, and you have to fit with that title. And you have to be mature enough, and you really want to have the passion. And also, I want to explain that being passionate is different from being emotional. Emotional is negative, but passionate is very positive.
Any comments from any things to reinforce what Mehran has said from Zubin, Lyla, Shirin, Karishma?
Yeah, I guess just following on from what Mehran has said there, Farrokh. I've had, I'm on PhD student number 8 at the moment. And, like Lyla, I have sort of relationships, very deep relationships with all of my ex-students. It is only 2 of them have actually taken that PhD out into practice. The others are are in academia in some shape or form. And so it is a lifestyle. You know, it's a huge commitment for those 3 years. You know, those of you, you know, who are listening to this either live or recorded, you know, if you've done a master's and you think, oh well, you know, I'll take the same kind of literature review that I've done in my master's, and I'll do a bigger study for my PhD. It don't work like that, people. You know, it really doesn't. You know, doing a PhD is a whole new ball game. You know, and you're taking the jump from 15,000 words to a 80,000 word thesis. But believe me when I tell you that my thesis actually came to in total, I think about 200,000 words before I had to then chop it down to meet the university's regs down to 80,000. And that's a different problem in itself, you know. So, you know, you do have to go into this in a very, very deep way. So you have to be committed, totally committed, not least of all because, you know, you're spending a lot of money on this as well. Let's not forget that.
Anybody else?
It is a calling.
Lyla and then Idil. Go ahead, Lyla.
Oh, Idil, you want to go ahead, please?
No, Lyla, you go first, then Idil. Your hand was up
Excellent.
first.
Okay. So I think it is a calling. It is a huge undertaking. It's a huge commitment. They say it's 3 years, but it rarely happens in 3 years. It'll be 4. And in development studies, if you work in development studies, you end up doing field work in pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic times, which again is very life-changing. So you have very intense experiences. So yeah, it's a very intense process. And whether you end up as an academic or not, it will change your life. It'll change the way you look at the world. And also it's a luxury. So don't forget, you have 4 years or 3 years to work on one topic, which is amazing. Because once you become an academic, you don't have time to really work on anything in any great depth. So you don't have the same time to read or write. So in that sense, it's a huge privilege too.
Thank you. Idil?
Yeah, I think all of you emphasized passion, and definitely passion is extremly important. Also lifestyle. I'd like to argue that in some form or fashion, all of you are also entrepreneurs. You're, you know, pursuing an opportunity beyond resources available, and really, I would like to expand passion a little bit and say that you first need a purpose. And once you know what you want to do and why you want to do it, you need the passion, which is a real fire in your belly to make it work. And as Zubin said, you need persistence. There's nothing that's worth doing that comes easily. Whatever it's really worth doing requires a lot of persistence. And lastly, a little bit of providence. So if you have purpose, passion, persistence, and providence, I think that would make it, you know, work. And you'll be the student and professors, I think it'll work perfectly. So that was my comment about today.
Thank you. I'd like to add to what Idil and Lyla and others have said. The purpose is not just short term, but also long term. What makes you happy in the long term? What do you see yourself doing 10, 15, 20 years from now? How would you like to be remembered 10, 20 years from now? So it's not just the intellectual side of things, but there is the social side of it and also the economic side of things. As a professor, you have to raise money. As a professor, all 3 professors are involved in educating people who go out and have a conscience, who have a social conscience, and do social things. They themselves do it. And all of them create intellectual value by publishing books and papers. So that's what happens. So I want to reinforce this notion that Karishma brought out about ZFN being involved, or WZCC being involved in the creation of intellectual, economic, and social value. And what Idil has said about purpose. Purpose is not just short term, it's also long term. Purpose to say, okay, for 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is, I'm going to have a life to do such and such. And tie that to what Mehran said was about lifestyle. That is, the lifestyle that you have as a PhD student is going to be quite different from the lifestyle that you choose to live when you're in industry or you're in government or you're making a difference or for the rest of your life in your career. So think broadly and think in terms of what truly makes you happy. So we are now open for more comments. Rohinton, did I see you coming on and saying you want to say something?
I put a note in the chat box. I was asking, how do we motivate our youth to take advantage of what all these wonderful people have to offer? We have to get them, yeah.
So Rohinton's question to the panelists, including Karishma, is how do we motivate our youth? And I would love our youths like Vistas and Arish and Zain and Karen to jump in and say how would you like to be motivated? So let's start with the youth. How would you like to be motivated? What would motivate you to get a graduate degree, or what motivates you? Vistas, how about you?
I would like to be helped. Hello everyone.
Yes.
Oh, thanks a lot. I'm so happy and proud to hear. I actually was surprised. I didn't know about this kind of activities, and I'm so proud to be in one part of the Zoroastrian community. And thanks a lot to Zoroastrian Faculty Network to be here. And yes, I'm about my motivation as I study in physical medicine and rehabilitation. That is my long stand interest that I'm looking, because always now in over here also in Tbilisi, I'm studying in TSM University. When I go to some clinics as our clinical course, the patient come after surgery, they didn't do physical rehabilitation immediately. And they come to doctor suffering from stiffness, some pain. And the doctor said, what happened to you? Did you go to rehabilitation after your surgery? And he was the first time to hear about rehabilitation. And this is concept, and he left the golden time for rehabilitation. And it's in my mind also in Iran, that it's because it's a new faculty and it's a natural health without a drug, without surgery to prevent the suffering and disease. That was always in my mind in Iran also, but in Iran, I didn't get any opportunity to participate in it because an Iranian education system is different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Vistas, you've answered the question. Zain, Karishma,
Yes.
Nazmin, what motivates you to get a higher degree? Go ahead, Zain.
So if I have to say list of one or two things which had motivate me to pursue a higher degree, would be to generate knowledge, because generating knowledge is probably one of the best thing one can do, because knowledge will outlive you and it would help the community even in present and future.
Thank you. Karen. Then Nazmin.
What motivates me to get a graduate degree is that if I go for a graduate degree, I can further learn to how to think and how to solve problems. And like Zian said, how to create knowledge so that in future, I can contribute in the fields that I am interested in, and that field benefits people all around the world.
Great. Nazmin, Arish.
Hello,
I would
everyone.
like to say,
Yes, please continue. Okay, so for me personally, I'm studying biomedical engineering, and I'm really interested in to be a technician, so maintenance devices and fixing them if there's a part and maintaining them. And I really hope to do this because I go to hospitals in my country, and the devices are not very advanced. So I would like to help to maybe market some new devices and maintain it.
Thank you. Nazneen, what motivated you to get a graduate degree?
So the most important thing that motivated me was, of course, getting more knowledge of the subject, understanding about more critical thinking of the aspect of the subject as well. As I studied my master's in financial analysis, I got to know how do we go about doing analysis in it, because in my bachelor's, we never got to learn all of that. So of course, knowledge was the most important aspect.
Great. So we've heard from 5 people who've given us why they are motivated to go to graduate school, Rohinton. So with that, I'd like to move on to Farrokh Cooper, who has his hand up, and then Edel, I'll bring you back in.
Thank you, Farrokh. I was interested to hear from Shirin and Lyla actually about your experiences not being men in academia, and also how you've managed those experiences, good and bad.
Great. Short answers, please.
Yeah. I mean, in academia, I must say personally, it has been a little bit of an issue, as in when you have small children and you're looked upon as someone who's a part-time professor, but you're not actually. And there are some issues there, but generally colleagues have been good. And just the other point is that while doing field work, when we're doing field work, I did find that walking around with my little black bag in doing field work, you're looked upon as suspicious. You're a woman on your own. Where's your father? Where's your brother? Where's your husband? Especially if you're doing it in rural areas. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lyla.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. I mean, overall, I must say I've been very privileged and I haven't had that glass ceiling so much, but there's been lots of slippages. So, when I started working, I was one of the only women working on water, and there were lots of engineers, males, who felt very threatened by what I was saying. So I often had very patronizing comments. Luckily, that has changed because now you have far more critical social science insights. Also, for a long time, people kept asking me, what's your PhD on, even when I'd become a professor, because they just didn't see me as a professor. So very patronizing. Doing fieldwork in India in many different contexts. On the one hand, yes, there are the difficulties that Shirin spoke about. There's more vulnerability as a woman on your own, but also you gain access to lots of different spaces that men won't have. So I could go to women-only spaces and chat and get to learn lots of things. And as a educated woman by default, I could also hang out with the men in the square. So in that sense, I got access to the different worlds. And just in terms of the PhD, I think for women, it does give you authority and credibility, and it gives you that edge. So please go ahead and get your PhDs and speak and do stuff, and fly. So I think it's also a rite of passage. So I think it's in that sense, it's really important.
Thank you. Edel.
If you don't mind, just coming back to Rohinton's question of how do we motivate young people, I think a big part, obviously parents have influence on them. The final decision is the children's, but parents and other people in the field who are sort of your mentors while growing up. And I'm a firm believer that what gets talked on the dining table is what gets done. Parents talk about medicine or engineering in the same way we are trying to get parents to talk about entrepreneurship. If parents talk about higher learning and PhDs, that's where the mind gets molded, at least as a starting point, and then they make a decision. So I think a parent's role is also very important in motivating the child.
Karishma wants to reinforce that. Go ahead, Karishma.
Absolutely. In my home, and I have to say to the faculty I've been with, I've always been treated as an individual soul, not as a girl, not as a woman, but as a soul who's interested in learning how to learn. And that's how I treat my students. For example, 2 days ago, I had a parent knocking on my door whose student studied with me 7 years ago, who came to check whether my phone number was the same so that he could pass my number on to a friend. So when we treat individuals as individuals, a lot more preparation. So when you prepare to send in your application, that proactive spirit of showing that you as individuals together with your parents, with respect for your faculty, want to make a difference in the world, shows up in your first application to university fellowship, shows up when you apply for a master's, it shows when we apply for a PhD, and ability to have metacognition, learning from every experience and wanting to contribute back to the network gets us to a position where people want to then invest in us because they know that what we take, we are willing to contribute to, pass it on, and then with consistency, follow through the journey of the student. Like we have on the ZFN, we have Farrokh, who adopts children as his academic children, not just as his mentees. We have Adel, who supports entrepreneurship in every possible way. We have Behram, a doctor who works 14 hours a day at least, who then takes time to come to meetings on time and follow through with the students and do other projects. So this ability to pursue and support, we have Yazdi Tatra, who will support every possible webinar that has a good intention. This is what gets you the support of other people. So proper preparation promotes positive performance, as my daddy always said. And we've got Mummy here who set up my academy. So we work together.
Thank you. Behram. And Farrokh, do you still need to talk? Okay, so Behram, then Farrokh. Go ahead, Behram.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to try and address Rohinton Revetna's question. To reach the youth, I want to underline what Adel Davar said. We need to start early. Start at the age of 3, 4, reinforced by the age of 11, 14. And I think there are programs in place now by the WZCC which are tailored to this age group. We have not tapped into those. Those need to be lifted up and multiplied and shared across the world of the Zoroastrian diaspora. Then that's a comment in terms of addressing Rohinton's question. But I have a question for Lyla. In terms of working in water and rural development and so on, this has been going on for 20, 40, 50 years at the UN. And yet we are still at ground zero. The Paris Accords are not going anywhere. There's another COP coming up in Glasgow. Is there a flaw in the whole concept of the North and the South, the global North and the global South? The concept that we have to transfer funds from the global North to the global South in order to get these things done? Or is there another paradigm where we can think of the global South taking care of itself without having to depend on funds from the global North? Can we think of a developmental model which is self-sufficient, where there's a South-South dialogue? Would you like to comment on that, particularly in reference to water?
Yeah, well, really, really good questions. So firstly, I agree, it's a complete failure. We should all be completely ashamed of ourselves, just in terms of how much has failed, despite all the resources poured in. You know, why do you actually have 2 billion people without access to safe water, even though it's been on the agenda for a long time? So I think it's because a lot of the emphasis has been on hardware, you know, on sinking in the stuff, actually on who is using it, what happens, on management, on exclusion. So some of these wider issues are often neglected. And, you know, it's very easy to sink costs in infrastructure, but then if you don't look beyond that at some of the wider governance questions, then I think there's a failure. So I think that's one issue. I completely agree with you about the fact that we have to move beyond this traditional idea of the, you know, a unidirection from the North to the South. We're in the sustainable development era. Development is universal. We can learn from each other. It's not just South-South, but there's also the South and the North. So you have huge pockets of discrimination in the UK, in the US. There's people without access to water in Canada, in the US, etc. So I guess we really need much more mutual learning, bottom-up processes of change and understandings. And I think these things are now being triggered. You know, how can we learn from models that work and why, and how do we scale them out? And the universality of development really has been underscored in the pandemic too, because, you know, you have everybody in some ways, the inequality and how the problems build on this universal inequality, and the fact that if we don't get that right, if we don't address global inequality within societies, between the genders, and also across the world, we're really not going to progress very far.
Thank you. I've been informed by Yosti that we have 5 more minutes. So we will. Let me tell you how this works. After we officially stop the recording and end everything, we continue talking as long as people want to stay online. So with that, let me now move into the end. And this is where we have closing remarks. And the first person to have a closing remark is Shirin.
Yeah, I will just say, well, I would like to thank WZCC and ZFN to start. You have started this conversation and for including me as part of that. I'm very keen to work with any potential students who are with us today or who come to know about this network on the topic of digital innovation and development. As I said, if you look at my profile, you will see that I'm interested in certain areas of technology and social assistance programs, primary healthcare, and the humanitarian sector as well, the role of technology in improving the conditions of refugees and displaced persons. I'll only say, the last thing I'll say there is that please note that because at the LSE I work in 2 departments, as I said earlier, it's important that anyone who is curious looks at the conditions, entry conditions, etc., for both of these. So that's the Department of Management as well as the Department of International Development. I think that is, yeah, good luck along your journey. And I think that's what I could say. Thanks.
Lyla?
This has been a great webinar, and I thank you very much for inviting me. It's been great to have a conversation and also get to know many of the co-panelists and also others across the world. So in that sense, this pandemic era really brings us together. A PhD is a really exciting journey. It's a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's tough, but it's life-changing. So obviously, be prepared for that challenge when you start it. It's very important to have a strong idea. As I said, I would need somebody to work on what we're doing. We'd need very strong critical social science inputs to address questions of sustainability, environment and development, water and sanitation, displacement, climate, etc., because these perspectives are often lacking. And that's why we have this persistence of problems. Why is it that we still haven't solved some of these very, very basic questions? I think because we've ignored some of the governance and the critical socio-cultural elements. And the IDS system, you need to basically apply. And then as Zubin and Shirin would agree, it needs to be a really top quality proposal to get admitted. And then, of course, there's the challenge of funding. And I hope this network will help in supporting that. So yeah, it's been great to have this dialogue and definitely embrace it, embrace the challenge. And, good luck to this generation. May you, fly and soar.
Zubin.
Thank you, Farrokh. So my closing statements or closing remarks will hinge around a couple of areas. I just want to touch on the conversation we had addressing parents in particular. I think it's for too long, someone who was born in London in the UK, for too long the Zoroastrian community around the world has been harping on to their children about becoming, doctors, lawyers, engineers. I don't see many parents saying, well, become an academic, become a professor. I think it's a very worthwhile job that I do, touching the lives of hundreds of thousands of young people. So parents, please consider academia for your children. Number 2, I think it's worth also saying specifically the launch of this ZFN program for the UK, that the UK now has reintroduced its 2-year post-study work visa, okay? And that should be, in terms of the commitment, the time and the financial commitment that, families are going to make to the studies of their children. It's worth mentioning that because, you can then potentially spend 2 more years in the UK, trying to work and recoup some of the money there. and we're talking substantial amounts of money. But do have a conversation with the faculty, with myself, with Shirin, with Lyla. If you have an interest in our respective research areas, you've got our details there. Do contact us. Let's have a conversation, because you don't just go from one webinar to application. It's a long, drawn-out process, and we'll help you to craft your applications so that you can produce the best possible work that's going to be out there. So thank you to everyone, and as a international director with WZCC, I'm really delighted that we're finally getting this off the ground in the UK as well. So thank you, everyone.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, thank you everyone for being here and participating in a very interactive way. The conversation continues at ZoroastrianFacultyNetwork.org. We put up all our webinar recordings there, so anyone who wishes to go and look it up can look it up. We also have a YouTube channel, which was mentioned earlier. We have a Facebook page where a lot of people are interacting with each other. And of course, I must thank Kerin, who keeps on sending me information on scholarships. And we have a lot of information on scholarships, internships, and academia, which we put up on ZoroastrianFacultyNetwork.org. So please do visit, register yourself there so that you get the latest updates all the time. Thank you.
Beram, I see your hand is up. Would you like to say something?
I took my hand down, but I can say that this has been a delight to have the faculty from the UK to join us, and look forward to working together in harmony and taking the flag forward. The interesting part I found about the webinar was the introduction of the concept of the Gathas. And if our whole Zoroastrian community would focus on just two areas, the Gathas and ancient Iran, we'd all come together. Those are two areas which bind the whole Zoroastrian diaspora together. And we are right along this path of knowledge and wisdom. Ahura Mazda, one translation of that word is light of wisdom. And what we are doing in the ZFN is promoting that. And the ZFN is promoting the creation of new knowledge, which is in harmony with our faith traditions. So thank you for this opportunity, and I hope we can continue with it.
That brings, that's my turn to come up with the closing statements. This would not have been possible without the support of Idil, Beram, Karishma, and Yazdi. They have been steadfast in terms of supporting this and joining the preparatory meetings that we have to put something like this together. I'm very grateful to Shirin, Lyla, Zubin, and Karishma for the presentation today. The point that was brought up about parents, I think, is very important by Zubin, when he said that parents should focus now on careers, not just on the Naukri. Become a doctor or become a lawyer, but think in terms of career, what career, that there are many more careers, and how people can go and have careers in the social sciences, in the humanities, in music, and art, what have you. I'm absolutely delighted that we have 5 young people here: Zain Pitawala, Karen Pitawala, Arish, and Vistas, and Nazneen. And so we have 5 candidates, and we have 3 faculty, and we are looking for one ZFN scholar to place with these 3 faculty. So we've already got 5 students. So I'm very optimistic that perhaps Nazneen will think about doing a PhD. Perhaps Karen will think about doing a PhD. Perhaps Arish and Vistas will think about doing a PhD. Zain has committed to doing a PhD already, but he's a few years away. So I think we have the people, and so I'd encourage the 5 young people here to reach out to all three people who wowed us with their talks today. And with that, thank you all very much. Yazdi, please stop recording, and we will continue here as long as you would like to chat with us.